Greetings, Dr. Ron Lewert here. Welcome to my YouTube page. This presentation is going to cover foods to avoid in order to prevent progression of osteoarthritis. So we'll go into some very specific food groups to avoid. First, we're going to introduce the pathophysiology of osteoarthritis, who gets it, what are the symptoms, and how does it progress. And then we'll go into very specific food groups to avoid and why. So the first fact that we're going to review here is osteoarthritis is a non-inflammatory arthritis. It's the most common arthritis present in humans. It affects the joints of our hands, our knees, hips, and spine most commonly. And it occurs when the cartilage that protects the ends of our joints wears down. Cartilage cushions the ends of our joints and allows for smooth gliding. So when we eat certain foods, or if we have trauma to the involved joint, we will have release of enzymes which break down the cartilage and start a cascade of damage that eventually results in osteoarthritis. So let's get into this a little bit, and in this next slide we'll go over the symptoms. So the symptoms of osteoarthritis most commonly are reduced joint range of motion and flexibility, muscular stiffness, and if you have OA, as we refer to this osteoarthritis, we're going to call it OA for short, of the cervical spine or lower back especially, you'll notice morning stiffness. Osteoarthritis produces lack of movement and painful joints, joints that are sore or tender to the touch, and or may crack or have crepitus associated with them. So a lot of people complain of grinding when they have osteoarthritis of the neck, for example. Weight bearing on the arthritic joint is usually painful, and motion of the affected joint, at least initially, may produce pain, but the therapeutic benefits of exercise shine through for osteoarthritis, and for most people, gentle exercise reduces osteoarthritis pain. So let's take a look at what comprises a healthy joint. First of all, we're going to look at the index finger of an x-ray of a right hand. And so this joint right here we're going to be discussing. And in this diagram, you can see that we have some of the components already labeled. So this is our subchondral bone. This is bone, and this is bone. So that would represent this bone and this bone here. And the space in between, the dark gray space here, is the joint space. Subchondral bone are the two ends of the bone here and here. We have the joint cartilage, which is this blue line here. So this functions to cushion the articular surfaces. Here's the other cartilage piece here. And the cartilage functions to protect the subchondral bone from frictional forces and from weight bearing. We have synovial fluid or joint fluid contained within the joint space, and the fluid that is secreted by the synoviocytes helps to lubricate the joint. The fluid is called synovial fluid. If we look at the synovial membrane, there's a membrane that surrounds the joint, okay, sort of encases it, and the synovial membrane is a vascular covering. It's connective tissue, and it lines the inner portion of the joint and functions to produce the lubricating fluid. Actually, there are other purposes for the fluid. Circulation allows waste to exit the joint and nutrients to enter the joint. Cells of the synovial membrane which perform these functions, as previously stated, are called synoviocytes. And there's another structure called a joint capital. It's like a big cocoon-like structure, almost like a big fibrous structure that surrounds the joint and holds everything in place. So if we take a look at the healthy joint, here's the upper bone, the lower bone, and the joint space. And you can see that the smooth articular surfaces all the way across the hand are intact. In fact, if you look at all the joints of this normal x-ray, you can see even the carpal bones are intact. However, on the arthritic hand, the damage to the cartilage has basically obliterated the joint space, and all of the distal articulations here. Look at this. This is the one that we were looking at through the past slide. And here's the same articulation. Look, there's no joint space. We have bone spurs. There's quite a bit of damage through the proximal and distal interphalangeal joints here. If you look at the thumb and the first carpal metacarpal articulation of the arthritic hand, you can see bone spurs, displacement of the carpal bones, and joint space obliteration compared to the normal. So what causes the joint damage of osteoarthritis? Well, let's highlight over here right away. We're going to talk about the American diet. Unfortunately, the American diet is chock full of goodies that specifically initiate the release of matrix breakdown enzymes. So what are those foods? Well, we see the sugars, any kind of sugary drinks, sweet drinks, cakes, sweets, products that are made of wheat, so your breads and your pastas and your rolls and your bagels and buns, corn products, processed foods, any type of TV dinners, anything where you reach into the frozen food section, anything that's in a package or a plastic package usually, except if it's fresh fruit and vegetables. These are all processed foods, fast foods, drive-through foods, soft drinks, soda, sweet drinks, alcohol, and then obviously cigarettes. So unfortunately, there are a lot of items in or on the American diet that initiate cartilage breakdown. So with osteoarthritis, these foods will trigger an imbalance of matrix degrading enzymes, which will break down and do damage to the cartilage. So, per the last slide, ingestion of the sugars and with cigarette smoking, alcohol consumption, processed food consumption, we're favoring the release of matrix degrading enzymes. These are called matrix metalloproteinases. Under normal healthy conditions, the healthy cartilage has viscoelastic and compressive properties due to production of type 2 collagen and proteoglycan. We mentioned that previously, and with the inflammatory foods, we have a reduction of type 2 collagen and proteoglycan production. So everything that is pro-inflammatory does damage to our joints on the long term. So we should avoid eating these foods. Let's get into more specific food groups here on the next slide. So here's where I get to bust some chops here, because I am totally against the consumption of the amount of sugar that we are pushing on our kids in this country. It's absolutely disgusting. We have obese kids, kids with diabetes, kids with poor self-image, kids that are depressed, and I'm going to tag sugar as one of the main causes for this assault on our children. And I blame the adults, okay? So if you adults got a little bit more responsible with yourselves and improved your diet and drank water and stopped drinking soda and stopped drinking alcohol, maybe got out and did some exercise, right? Your kids wouldn't be in such bad shape. You have to take responsibility for your health. And in doing so, you have to be an example to your children, because they're going to eat and do exactly what you do. So I'm a big proponent of eliminating processed sugars from everyone's diet. There is no peer-reviewed journal article anywhere on the planet that states we need processed sugar in order to survive as humans. We don't need it. So these beverages that are chock full of high fructose corn syrup, such as ketchup, soda, sweet drinks, you know, you get your kid a Capri Sun in the morning, you're giving them basically, let me see, there's 5 teaspoons of sugar in a Capri Sun. If you're allowing them to drink any 12-ounce beverage such as a Gatorade, you're giving them 9 teaspoons of sugar. Coke, 9 teaspoons of sugar. If you're going to do the Dew, a 20-ounce Dew over here has 19.25 teaspoons 19.25 teaspoons of sugar that you hand in your kid with that Mountain Dew. This is irresponsible, I think, behavior, literally, as an adult. It's literally irresponsible to give your kid that much sugar. Disagree with me if you would. The Big Gulp. If you go to 7-Eleven, Big Gulp, you're getting 32 teaspoons in that bad boy. I just don't know what to say. It's way too much sugar. Let's go on to the next food group to avoid. I think you guys get the point here. So the second food group or type of food to avoid is obese meat. Let's define obese meat. So your typical Publix purchased meat is grain-fed. All I hear in most diets is to stay away from red meat. I don't agree with that, as long as you're eating grass-fed meat. So if we look over here, we look at our grain-fed piece of meat here. It looks like a New York strip that you'd purchase at Publix, and you can see the intramuscular marbling of fat. People seem to like this because it adds flavor. So that's what our cattle are bred for. They're bred for flavor, and they're bred for to provide you with a pleasant chew. Okay, so the meat is bred to contain intramuscular fat so that it's soft and juicy and tasty. Okay, great. However, it's really bad for you because the cow that produces this type of meat has been eating grain. They've been eating corn or wheat, and as you all know, corn and wheat are pro-inflammatory. Corn and wheat violate the glycemic index rule. They raise your blood sugar, and this results in an insulin response from your pancreas. Grain-fed meat also is pro-inflammatory and does not contain a lot of omega-3 fatty acids. So grass-fed meat, on the other hand, you can see how lean this meat is. These cattle do not stand in the barn and feed out of a bag. They roam the hillside eating grass and nuts and seeds and stuff out on the hillside. The lean meat that you see here is a product of movement. The fat that you see here is a product of stasis, or no movement. If we look over to the side here, grain-fed beef contains high levels of inflammatory omega-6 fatty acids and not a lot of omega-3s. So this is your store-bought Publix steak. Grain-fed beef contains high levels of fat compared to grass-fed meat. We already illustrated that. The grass-fed meat is much leaner. And grain-fed beef violates the 1-to-1 up to 4-to-1 omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acid ratios. Typically grain-fed meat is about 10 to 15 to 1, 10 or 15 to 1, within that range. Omega-6 to omega-3, that violates the 1-to-1 up to 4-to-1 ratio. However, grass-fed beef is 3-to-1. So it's right in the omega-6 to omega-3 ratios that we want for healthy anti-inflammatory type of effect on our body. So, what else is included in our obese meat category? That is all deli meat, all processed meats such as hot dogs and sausages, and drive-through meat. Just think about drive-through meat. You're not going to get a grass-fed burger at Wendy's. We'll just leave it at that. Arby's, if they have the meats, they can keep them because I know they're not grass-fed. I know they're all pro-inflammatory processed meats, and they are very fatty. I have a bet with one of my doctor friends that the meat that you are eating from McDonald's and or Wendy's or any of the drive-through, there's a small percentage of us that believe it's partially roadkill. Prove me wrong. So the processed foods are the third group of foods that I am going to advise that you never eat. This is one of the worst categories, and you'll see when we talk about obese meats, that's right up there in terms of things to avoid as well. But your processed foods are found in the processed food aisle. Go to where all the freezers are, and you'll see Hot Pockets. You'll see Stouffer's products and all of these products that claim to be nutritionally sound. They even claim to be good for your kids, which I think is criminal. With the amount of sodium and added sugar, with the amount of preservatives, flavor enhancers, gluten, the obese meat that is in these products, you're not going to get a grass-fed piece of meat or any kind of grass-fed meat products in these processed foods. And you're also going to see an overabundance of unhealthy fats and oils in these products. So these should be avoided completely. There's no healthy processed packaged food that you're going to shove in the microwave and then let your kid eat. There's no excuse. There's no way you'll ever find that these products do anything but severe damage to your joints and your mainly your cardiovascular system. Eating these products leads to kidney issues, and mainly relating to sodium and the sugars. So please avoid these in general. No further comments necessary. Oh no, I have to give up alcohol? Well, unfortunately, alcohol also triggers the release of degradative enzymes, and these enzymes are bound to have their effect on your joint cartilage. Heavy drinkers, those of you who drink more than 21 beverages a week, that's maybe 3 beers a day. For some moms, it's a bottle of wine or half a bottle of wine almost every night. I mean, I have many people in my practice. They tell me their after work practices, and there's a lot of alcohol consumption during the week. The American Cancer Society is trending towards recommending against the consumption of alcohol in general. 1 or 2 drinks per day is not healthy. Do the math. 14 drinks per week could produce an addiction. It could produce extra weight and empty calories. But the main issue with alcohol is that there's a correlation between alcohol consumption and obesity, elevated blood pressure, blood sugar, and increased risk for many types of arthritis, whether they're non-inflammatory or inflammatory. Current studies are trending towards recommending against the consumption of alcohol in general, as opposed to limiting consumption. That's a very interesting trend. Years ago, they were recommending 1 or 2 drinks per day as something being healthy for your heart, but there are no conclusive studies on this. So I would recommend staying away from the stuff if possible. The empty calories that alcohol provides do not result in any health benefits whatsoever. So if you have to drink alcohol, I would limit it severely. Alcohol will destroy your joints if it is consumed on a daily basis. You'll have other issues with type 2 diabetes and other systemic disease if you chronically ingest alcohol. So I hope this information was enough to help you get rid of some of the sugary products, some of the processed meats, some of the alcohol in your diet. And the sweet drinks are big. So if you can make improvements in your diet, you'll see reduction in the severity of osteoarthritis. And I'm Dr. Ron Lewert. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Please give me a thumbs up or a like or subscribe. We'll see you next time.